Thank you very much, Pete. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Hello, Martin, Daniel, Joe. Good morning from Paris. I'm happy to share this story with you, a story which I'm very fond of. Let's just start with what the Convention on Wetlands, or commonly known as the Ramsar Convention, is about. Very proud to say that it's our first global environmental treaty. So far, we have 173 contracting parties that belong to this convention. This is a very special feature that is ecosystem-specific focus, which gives clarity and gives us also an opportunity to materialize this globally in terms of area. And I will show you this, what it means in the next slide. It welcomes contracting party with a broad and inclusive definition of wetlands. So for example, beyond just talking about marshes and swamps, it also includes rivers, lakes, mangroves, peatlands, and so on and so forth. So, like more stakeholders feel invited and engaged in this convention thanks to this more flexible definition. So what is it about, really? So contracting parties commit to designate, protect Ramsar sites, or the official name will be wetlands of international importance. And then they commit to promote wise use in the sites, on the sites, and cooperation on transboundary issues. This is also very, very important. And also, another special feature of this convention is that it promotes the wise use. You will find this terminology across different documents of the convention. It's at the heart of the convention, like at its core. And it talks about preservation, but it also talks about how to better integrate these ecosystems into general development programs and policies. Now, as far as my knowledge goes, this is the only convention that has a geographical, let's say, representation, like in terms of area, you can see the impact and the commitment of different contracting parties by establishing this network of Ramsar sites. However, this comes at a cost because, of course, there is a challenge in terms of data. Not all contracting parties submit their reports every now and then. Every 6 years at the most, they are supposed to send updated information on the Ramsar sites, especially to see if the ecological character has changed, if there are new drivers in terms of biodiversity loss, and so on and so forth. So we don't have that complete picture for all of the Ramsar sites. And to your right is just zoom in on Wales. Of course, the UK reports as a whole, so it's kind of hard to break down the UK, but as far as I know, there are currently 10 Ramsar sites or wetlands of international importance. Now, this timeline here is just to show you that this is not a new topic under the Ramsar Convention. The fact talk about urban and peri-urban wetlands. So in green, you can see the years in which the conversation started, basically via resolutions and workshops. And I would like to highlight the role of Morocco, Republic of Korea, Tunisia, also WWF back then, trying to pitch this idea to contracting parties, which was not easy. These negotiations at COPs were tough. Some countries will think the criteria for this accreditation scheme was too rigorous or difficult for cities to deliver, whereas some other contracting parties think it was too flexible and too easy. So there were my colleagues until midnight or even later than midnight trying to draft a document in which everyone will feel happy with the criteria and the approach. And working in urban biodiversity, I find this convention on wetlands very exceptional because it has a solid, like a long established mechanism in which wetlands from cities, like subnational governments, can engage. Good news is that this year we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Wetland City Accreditation. What you see in the blue triangles, that means the 3 cohorts in which we have accredited cities, being the last round in Zimbabwe earlier this year in COP15. So on the overall, we have 74 cities right now that have been accredited as wetland cities. And then for 2018, I want you just to keep in mind this logo that is called Wetland City Network, because I will talk further ahead about this initiative. So what is it about? It's a scheme, of course, that encourages cities that have important wetlands within or around their boundaries, and that they promote a positive relationship with these ecosystems through different strategies. So, and what I mean here is very important, because it's not intentions. They need to really submit evidence that these actions are taking place already for some years on the sites, So in terms of public awareness, participation, education, restoration, even the rehabilitation of wetlands or the creation of new wetlands. That's also in China, we see this a lot in their cities. And also evidence on how local communities are being involved in the management of these ecosystems and how this impacts their livelihoods. So that's also like our criteria as evidence in all those fronts. Now, of course, we know for city mayors, it's very important to find this a stepping stone towards a bigger narrative, right? Like if they already talk about a resilient city, a blue or green city, and then they find this accreditation, for them it's important to have this international recognition. So this was, you can see here photos of our last certification ceremony at COP15. But then I want to also mention here that oftentimes this is not a job that came only from the city government. For example, in the case of Valdivia in Chile, this was possible thanks to the mobilization of communities for the last 20 years. And then at some point, the municipality listens and it's open to have a dialogue, right? And then you just build momentum, and then you are able to shape some policy frameworks through citizen mobilization. So it's of course a combination of different efforts, although here on the stage we see the mayors receiving this award. Some clarifications: this is voluntary system. This doesn't grant rights or impose legal obligation to the city or the contracting party. The accreditation is valid for 6 years with possibility of renewal. In COP15 Zimbabwe, we had the very first round of renewed cities, 18, if I'm not wrong, exactly. They renew their application, and they again need to submit evidence that they are doing the homework. And then they are raising the bar, and then they are doing even better compared to the baseline that was provided 6 years ago, right? And the last one is very important, because this is not the end point itself. It's not having the accreditation for the sake of the accreditation. It's having the accreditation because you are looking for a larger goal, right? Like a bigger ambition. It's part of the journey. Now, this is how the map looks right now. It's very clear that we have a strong engagement from countries as People's Republic of China, Republic of Korea. In Europe, France is very strong. Belgium recently also, it's participating with some cities, and recently Geneva from Switzerland. Africa is doing well. For me, it was very sad when I arrived to this committee 2 years ago to realize that no cities from Latin America whatsoever were participating in this scheme, because I know we have a lot to offer and to learn from. But I'm happy to say that last COP15, for the very first time, one city in Chile that I already mentioned, Valdivia, and Trelew in Argentina, were awarded as wetland cities. So that made me really happy as a regional representative. And here are some examples just to give you a flavor on how these wetland cities look in action. Again, as I said, we currently have 74. So whenever you want to talk about wetlands and cities and social engagement, citizen engagement, I would recommend you have a look at Colombo in Sri Lanka. They have beautiful projects dealing with participation from different communities and how that participation was effective in the terms of how the park, biodiversity park or a wetland park was designed and how they have a role in the co-management of these areas. So I would like to highlight this participatory component in Colombo. Whereas in Kigali, Rwanda, it was very important to witness how an industrial park of around 500 hectares that was causing a lot of issues in terms of pollution was reallocated with more sustainable practices and strategies. And then on the former site, they started a whole physical and biological rehabilitation of the wetland, thanks to a collaboration with the World Bank. So that's also a very important project. And then Wuhan, it's a city, is also known as the city of the lakes, the lake city. 40% of the area in that city with over 13 million inhabitants, 40% is green area. And they are very proud because they have, in a sustained manner, really work with towards the restoration of a greenway. And the length of this greenway is over 100 kilometers. And they managed, to integrate other agendas in the city as like flood control, waste water management, thanks to these sustained efforts of restoration in the city. Now, in Korea, I would like to highlight Suncheon because they really understood, especially how to integrate the wetlands into the buffer, like into the like the urban rural gradient. First of all, being aware of the needs of the people in terms of public space, but also being aware of the conservation targets and how, to bring together both objectives. This was very interesting case. Again, this was a Republic of Korea. This was introduced by the mayor himself last week in the roundtable. We were in Hungary hosting this roundtable, and they created a brand certified business for services and products attached to the wetland. So the criteria will be that local community is engaged and then somehow this initiative or this product or this building is contributing to wetland restoration. And so kind of like under the umbrella of the Wetland City Accreditation, the city government created this brand certified business. So of course, it supports the livelihoods of local communities. And last but not least, it was very moving to see last week in Lake Tata, kids, at the shores of the lake at 6:30 in the morning, 5 degrees, with binoculars, just waiting for the wild goose to fly and like kind of like witness this moment. And it was very, as I said, very, very touching to see people engage. And we were told by the mayor of the city that around 40,000 to 45,000 people travel to witness this festival. And of course, Tata is one of our wetland cities. These are the benefits, but I guess I kind of like already cover what it brings, like the accreditation, what could it bring for a city. Now, finally, how to engage. So I guess there are two possible answers to this question. So first, if you are, or your city, you're interested in applying for this accreditation, my advice will be, of course, to contact your national focal point, who is the person, I guess, at the Ministry of Environment, I don't know, that represents the UK to the Ramsar Convention. And then just keep an eye on where the call is launched next February. And normally the cities will have 1 year to prepare this application. However, if you are probably just to start with more interested in learning more about this community, my advice here will be to reach out to the Wetland City Network. Remember the logo I show you when I shared the timeline is a very important organization that was established in 2019, basically to facilitate the exchange among wetland cities, mainly peer-to-peer learning. They also organized this mayor's roundtable. I was showing the photos previously in Hungary. But as you can see in this short paragraph, they may admit observers representing different levels, international, national, local. So, if you, to start with, just want some inspiration and learn about these cases, or, you have a specific interest in, I don't know, I was talking to some Kenyan cities and they were more interested in learning about mangrove conservation and how other cities are doing that. So of course, this is also a platform that is out there as a resource for others to engage. So I guess, Pete, I will leave it here. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to go deeper into the criteria, the cycle, how is the workflow of this accreditation. I will be happy to reply to your questions. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias. That was fascinating. Thank you so much. It's actually, I'm feeling kind of embarrassed because my Trelew and rhan o'r Ladfa Cymraeg. It's Wales' one and only colony that we had many years ago, and they speak Spanish and Welsh there, and they've beaten us to Wetland City Accreditation.
So good news for you, Pete, is that last week it was announced that Valdivia will host the 2027 roundtable of Wetland City mayors. So for the very first time, the roundtable will cross the Atlantic and go to South America. So you are very welcome to join us so you can practice your Spanish.
Yeah. Necesito practicar mucho.
Muy bien.
Oh, gracias. Yeah, as everybody can tell, my Spanish is appalling. But no, that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm thinking that one of the smaller cities in Wales, Bangor, is host to the largest tidal rapid in Europe, but also right next to it is the Traeth Llavan local nature reserve, which is thousands of hectares, which is almost on a scale with some of the wetlands that you mentioned in Korea and China.
Mm.
So I think I'm going to be having a word with the people from Bangor, as well as people in Newport and Cardiff, who are right on our largest Ramsar site. I believe the D estuary is a Ramsar site as well, and we have a number of cities and large towns on there that might be interested. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. However, I've just seen that we have a question in the chat from my namesake, Claudia. Claudia, would you like to turn on your microphone and camera and ask Maria your question?
Good morning. Yeah, I was just curious. You showed some Ramsar sites in Wales, and they are in areas like for example, in Anglesey, which is quite small. And just curious if this can be applied at a smaller scale like that, or if does it have to have a certain level of population in order for it to work?
Thank you, Claudia, for your question. Where is the map? Here, exactly. Okay. So we take the UN Habitat definition for human settlements. So we have very small cities that are awarded as wetland cities. So in my intention also here, when I show different cities, that you can see the population the range is very ample. Even Tata City, it's only 23,000 inhabitants, and it's a wetland city. So yes, we can have very small cities participating in this scheme as long as they have an important wetland within or around their boundaries. And they need to have some kind of jurisdiction, like governance on that wetland. For example, if there is a wetland that is far away from the city, beyond its boundaries, but then in terms of administration, the city can do nothing, right? Like can't do anything about this management of this wetland, but that's like up to a different entity and organization. That might make things a bit tricky, because of course the local government applying for this accreditation need to show that it can manage that wetland that is referring to. If there is a collaboration with the metropolitan area, in Colombia, we have metropolitan areas, and there is the case that some cities collaborate and come together under this more metropolitan framework, then it's possible, as long as you kind of like make sure that the entities applying, they have jurisdiction over that wetland. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And as a quick supplemental to that one, in Newport on the Severn Estuary Ramsar site, there's a very large nature reserve, Newport Wetlands, and that's managed by my own organisation, Natural Resources Wales, but it's within the boundaries of the city council. So any development near that wetland would have to be authorised by the city council. Would that qualify the city council to apply because they have that wetland within their area?
What's the relationship between the city council and the city government?
The city council is the local authority. That is the sole local authority for that city and the surrounding.
Then the city council in this case can apply. And something that is important to highlight, and this is the perfect opportunity, your question, is this cannot happen with only one level of government. Like the city on its own cannot apply to this, neither can the national government. It has to be a coordinated effort. The application form is submitted by the local government, in this case, the city council, and then the national focal point of the UK gives like a check. Everything is complete. If some information is missing, it goes back to the city council, asks for more info, fill in the gaps, and then as a coordinated effort, this is submitted to the Secretariat of the Ramsar Convention. So it really needs to happen, like collaborative on a collaborative basis, both levels of government. So it's very important, for instance, if the interested comes from the city, to kind of like nudge the national level and say, wait, we want to apply. Do you have any agenda or any priorities? Is that okay? We apply. Let's start a conversation. Or it can come like top down. Like there are national priorities, and then the national government kind of like get in touch with some cities and say like, I think you are ready. If you are interested I think you are ready to apply for this. So it has to be like a joint effort.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and some of our local authorities will be familiar with this way of working because they've worked through, for example, designating a biosphere reserve. So 3 of our local authorities were involved with that. So yeah, this is a procedure that we've got some experience of. Before we run out of time, I'm going to turn to Martin McVeigh, who's asked a question. Martin, would you turn your camera and microphone on?
Right, thank you very much for interesting talk. Yes, it was my question. I'm not sure whether it's more for you, Maria, or for Pete, but I was just curious. I mean, Wales has got a few potential cities. England has more, and presumably that you're also advertising this scheme elsewhere in the UK as well. I was just wondering if there has been any interest yet from any particular city or local authority that is keen to explore it, or is it too early to say that? Are you just at the awareness raising stage at the moment?
You mean on like in the UK
Yeah,
that
in the
we
UK.
know?
Yeah, do we have an indication of which the first city in the UK is going to be that starts the ball rolling?
I don't have that information. It's not that I don't want to share it, but I honestly don't have that information. Of course, my focus naturally is more on Latin America. Of course, when a round of applications comes, we distribute those applications among ourselves. And I have South America, Latin America, and I also have some other cities. But to my hands, I haven't received any city from the UK, or in our meetings in our committee, no one has raised the point of a city in the UK being interested in applying. Of course, just bear in mind that I joined the committee 2 years ago, and this has been running for 10 years. So who knows if, there is a story in the early years of a city willing to join this scheme.
Thanks.
And of course, everyone, don't forget that there is a Welsh-speaking city which is already part of this scheme. It's just in Argentina. My colleague Molly Lovett has posted a question in the chat. Molly, would you like to unmute yourself and turn your camera on and ask your question?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I missed the very beginning. I'm sorry, I was 7 minutes late coming into the meeting. But I'm just wondering, just going on from what you said about Newport, Pete, if NRW own Newport wetlands and it's already being managed really effectively, what would be the benefits of it becoming a wetland city? It could cost us more, take a lot of time to do all of that. And actually the benefits might not be that significant because currently it's being managed, I presume, maybe not quite effectively.
Yeah, thank you, Molly, for that question. It's a very important question. In my experience and in my opinion, the benefits depend on how proactive the city is to leverage, and like kind of to make it visible, this recognition. So for example, Colombo in Sri Lanka, they said we are a wetland city, and they apply for some funds with the Global Environmental Facility, and this was kind of like a super plus when they were applying for this, so they really kind of like embraced the accreditation and took the most out of it, and they actually applied for renewal and they got it this year. So again, this I will say it depends on how proactive and creative the local government is. And if you want, for example, if you are the first city in your country, then you can also inspire other cities. So we identified this happening in China very clearly, and also in Korea. There is already like a national interest, and so the first city kind of like train the next generation of wetland cities. And China is where they coined this term of the sponge cities. So they really believe in water coexisting with cities. So yeah, I will leave it there, but I guess each city like shapes the benefit as it wants it, or depending on its own ambition. But it doesn't come with funding per se. It doesn't come with legal agreements. Someone in Chile was asking me if this has any impact on the environmental assessment to construct a highway that will go near a wetland. And I said, that's completely, entirely on the hands of the local municipality and wherever policy instruments they have in place to do that. So yeah, it's more like a symbolic, let's say, accreditation. Yeah.
But useful to leverage in funding, I guess, but no added protection because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is the case I mentioned in Sri Lanka, that they really...
Can I come back on that, just in the sense that have you ever had examples where having it nominated or creating a city wetland has actually created additional problems? For example, from the point of view of increased access, putting pressure on conservation and wildlife on a site, people wanting more access to areas that previously were very quiet, that kind of thing.
Very good question. Not in my experience. What we have seen, I mean, what we read from the application forms and from the testimonials is, of course, the other way around, like numbers of students visiting these areas, or in Argentina, indigenous people celebrating like a special anniversary in this lagoon system. And this is in harmony with, is respected by the local municipality. So this is what we see and what we read from the application forms. And whenever they applying for renewal, this is like evidence we get. We haven't had the case of, let's say, NGO addressing the secretariat and saying, look, after the Wetland City Accreditation actually displays was, we have now like a conflict in terms of access. I'm not sure if this is happening somewhere, but no, not to our knowledge. But
Thank you.
It's a very important question. Thank you.
And again, as a supplemental to that, Jeju in Korea, they're a biosphere reserve. They have a number of different designations, and it's fascinating to see that they see benefits of becoming a wetland city on top of all of their other designations. Can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired Jeju to become a wetland city?
Jeju is a fascinating case. They call themselves like an eco city, as you were saying. They have this overlapping between different recognitions. And what the branding system I show is just one of the examples, but they are also very active when it comes to youth engagement. So they have established a whole program of leadership, training the new generation when it comes to wetland protection. They sponsored young people to travel across different places of Asia to learn about like different management strategies in China and other cities in Korea. And they have in place a whole training program online, in person, and they call it like the diplomacy, leadership and diplomacy for wetland management, targeting the youth. So that's and Jeju this is important to mention, because they were really pioneers in the Wetland City Accreditation. They hosted the very first roundtable of Wetland City mayors back in 2018. It happened actually in Jeju, and then this year they applied for renewal. So they are here to stay. No matter if they has been already 6 years, but they want to keep definitely this accreditation up and running.
So it sounds as if Welsh cities applied for Wetland City Accreditation. There'd be a lot for them to learn from cities like Jeju and Trilio, and also that we could join the Wetland City network before accreditation. So perhaps we could learn how to do that beforehand.